The sun of planet Asteron rose slowly over the silver mountains. Its light touched the cities built across the valleys and rivers. Humanoids walked through streets of stone and steel, going about their daily lives as they had done for generations. Farmers carried food to the markets, workers repaired machines, and children played by the fountains. It was an ordinary morning, but soon it would change into something none of them could have imagined. Far beyond their skies, hidden inside an asteroid belt, a strange beacon pulsed with sudden energy. It had been silent for thousands of years, forgotten by time. Now its ancient machinery stirred again. A wave of soundless energy crossed the system, reaching the sensors of Asteron. The machines of the cities trembled for a moment, lights flickered, and communication towers went dark for several seconds. Aaron, a young engineer, stood inside a power station when it happened. He was checking the flow of energy to the eastern district when the control boards began to glow in strange patterns. The screens showed signals he had never seen before, sharp lines that repeated in an endless rhythm. Aaron frowned as he tapped the screen, trying to understand the message. At the same time, in the Great Hall of the High Council, leaders gathered in confusion. Reports came from every district of the planet. Lights had dimmed, machines had stopped, and strange signals had entered their systems. Some called it a natural event, others believed it was a hostile attack. Fear spread in the chamber, and no one had clear answers. Outside the hall, ordinary citizens felt uneasy. Families whispered in their homes, speaking of old stories that had been passed down through generations. These stories told of a time when the ancients ruled the stars. The ancients were beings so powerful that their will shaped entire worlds. Yet they vanished suddenly, leaving only ruins and legends behind. Many had forgotten the tales, but the sudden strange event brought them back into the minds of the people. Aaron returned home late that evening carrying his data pads. His neighbor, Myra, was a historian who loved to study old texts and fragments. She met him at his door, her face pale with worry. "Did you feel it?" she asked him quickly. "The old books speak of warnings like this. They speak of a signal before great despair." Aaron looked at her with doubt. It could be a natural burst of energy. Maybe a star nearby has flared. Myra shook her head. "No, I read of a beacon hidden among the stars. It was left by the ancients. They said it would awaken only when danger returned." Her words stayed with Aaron through the night. He lay awake, thinking of the strange patterns on the control board. They were not random, he was sure of it. They repeated like a code, like someone trying to speak across endless time. The next day, news spread across the cities. More disturbances had shaken the machines, and new signals filled the skies. Panic began to rise among the people. Some demanded the council to prepare defenses, others demanded evacuation of the cities. Trade stopped in many districts, markets grew empty, and children cried at night when the lights of the towers went dark again. Aaron could not remain still. He returned to the power station and requested permission to study the signal. The supervisors were too busy calming the city, so they gave him access without much thought. For hours he worked, comparing the patterns with the archives of old data. Nothing matched. It was something older than any record of their civilization. In the evening, Myra visited him again. She carried with her a worn book made of fragile sheets, something rare in a world where data was usually kept in crystals. She placed it on his table and opened it. Inside were drawings of a beacon surrounded by stars, and symbols that looked almost the same as the patterns on his screens. Aaron felt his chest tighten. "This cannot be a coincidence. The signal and your book are the same." Myra nodded. "It is the beginning of despair. The ancients tried to warn us. Something is returning." Outside the window, the night sky flickered with streaks of light. To the common eye it looked like falling stars, but to Aaron it was something more. He knew deep inside that machines did not fail in such strange ways without reason. Something ancient had awakened in the void, and its presence was reaching their world. The council called for another gathering. This time the chamber was filled not only with leaders but with voices of fear from every district. Some shouted for armies to be raised. Others begged to hide underground. A few spoke of surrender before even knowing what they faced. The unity of Asteron began to break, and despair touched every corner of the hall. Aaron and Myra sat together, listening to the rising arguments. Aaron whispered, "If this is the warning of the ancients, then we must understand it before we act. We cannot fight what we do not know." Myra agreed, her eyes on the council. "Knowledge is our only shield. If we fail to learn, then panic will destroy us faster than any enemy." The beacon pulsed again that night, brighter than before. Across Asteron, machines failed in unison, skies glowed with unnatural colors, and hearts of the people trembled with fear. No one knew if the ancients were returning, or if something far worse was approaching. But one truth was clear. The peace of the humanoids had ended. A shadow from the past had risen once more, and its first gift to them was despair. The streets of Asteron grew restless as days passed. The beacon continued to send waves of signals across the skies, each one stronger than the last. Machines that had served the humanoids for generations now behaved strangely. Engines failed without warning, communication lines broke in the middle of messages, and entire farms lost control of their water systems. The people lived in confusion, not knowing if their world was falling apart from within or if something outside was pressing against them. Aaron worked day and night at the power station, his eyes fixed on the glowing patterns of the beacon signal. He filled pages with sketches, writing numbers and shapes that repeated again and again. He was convinced it was a language, a warning, not random interference. Yet many in the council refused to listen to him. They wanted quick answers, not long studies. Myra remained by his side, her ancient texts spread across the table. She compared the patterns in the signals with the symbols recorded by the old scribes. Some marks were nearly the same, though faded by time. "These records speak of despair," she told him softly. "The ancients faced something that brought their empire to ruin. They left warnings, but our people forgot them. Now the warnings return, and few want to hear them." One evening, Aaron and Myra walked to the Hall of Records, a vast underground chamber filled with relics. The air smelled of dust and age, for few visited the place anymore. Myra guided him through long corridors where shelves rose like cliffs of forgotten history. She pulled a crystal tablet from the archives and placed it on a glowing stand. The tablet lit with images of stars and broken worlds. "The old ones wrote of a force that spreads despair," Myra explained. "It silenced civilizations, turning them into ruins. They said the ancients built beacons to awaken when danger returned. What you found in the signals matches these records." Aaron studied the images carefully. Stars burned, then faded into darkness. Structures floated shattered among the void. A shadow in the shape of machines spread across the skies. His hands tightened on the stand. "If these warnings are true, then the danger is near us already." News from other parts of the planet reached them soon after. Fishermen reported strange lights rising from the oceans, while travelers in the desert spoke of metal fragments falling from the sky. The council dismissed these as illusions born of fear, but the people believed. Rumors spread quickly, and with them the weight of despair. In one crowded market, Aaron overheard citizens arguing. Some swore that the ancients would return to protect them. Others said the ancients were the danger itself. Fists were raised, voices clashed, and soon guards had to step in. Asteron was not only threatened from the outside but also from within. That night Aaron returned home, unable to rest. He opened his notes and stared at the endless patterns. Myra arrived again, her book clutched tightly. She placed it beside him and pointed to a passage written in faded ink. "It says that when the beacon awakens, dreams will come," she whispered. "Dreams of the shadow. Aaron looked at her in silence. He had not told her, but for several nights he had seen visions in his sleep. He saw skies burning, ships like blades descending, and voices whispering without words. He felt fear in those dreams, not like a memory but like a message placed inside his mind. The next morning, dozens of people across Asteron claimed to have the same visions. Children woke crying, elders trembled, and soldiers stood pale, speaking of machines that moved like ghosts. Panic rose again in the streets. The council called the visions lies, yet even their members admitted they could not sleep without seeing the same horrors. Myra urged Aaron to bring proof of the connection between the beacon and the dreams. They worked together, comparing the timing of the beacon's pulses with the reports of visions. The results were clear. Every time the beacon pulsed strongly, the people suffered the dreams. Aaron carried this discovery to the council chamber. His voice shook but did not break as he spoke. The beacon is not an attack. It is a warning. The visions are not random nightmares. They are messages from the past, showing us what destroyed the ancients. If we do not prepare, it will destroy us too. Some council members laughed, saying fear made young men speak foolishly. Others glared at him, thinking he wanted to stir rebellion. Yet a few leaned forward, listening with serious eyes. One elder spoke, his voice heavy with age. If what you say is true, then the despair that ended the ancients walks among us now. The chamber filled with loud voices, some agreeing, others rejecting. Aaron and Myra left the hall, their hearts heavy. They knew truth often struggled against doubt, and time was running short. As night fell, the skies above Asteron glowed again. Strange lights crossed the horizon, moving with purpose, not like falling stars. Families stood outside their homes, pointing upward with wide eyes. Children clung to their parents as the ground trembled softly. Myra whispered, "The voices of the past are no longer whispers. They are shouting now." Aaron stared into the heavens where the lights moved like watchful eyes. He felt the weight of countless generations pressing down on him. The ancients had left their warnings, and now those warnings lived in his hands. He did not yet know how to face the danger, but he understood one thing clearly. The panic of the ancients had become the panic of his people, and despair was spreading faster than light. The skies of Asteron no longer carried peace. Where once stars shone calmly, strange lights now crossed in steady paths. They were not falling stones or bursts of fire but clear signs of something alive and controlled. Entire villages gathered at night to watch them, whispering that the ancients had returned or that a new enemy had come from the void. In the city of Vera, where the High Council sat, fear grew sharper each day. Reports came from the southern plains of glowing shapes landing for moments before rising again. Miners in the north said their tunnels shook as if something heavy had moved beneath the ground. Fishermen swore they saw vast shadows passing under their boats, silent but immense. Aaron worked harder than ever at the power station, using every tool he had to track the signals. His machines showed that the lights in the sky were not random. They moved in patterns, forming circles and lines as if searching for something. The signal from the beacon grew stronger each time the lights appeared, as though both were connected. Myra stood by him, her eyes fixed on her old texts. "The ancients wrote of watchers," she said. "Machines that scanned worlds before the great despair struck. These lights may be the watchers. They are searching to see if we are ready or if we are weak." Aaron nodded grimly. "Then we cannot let them believe we are helpless. If they see only fear, they will strike." Meanwhile, the council struggled. Some leaders demanded armies to be raised at once. They wanted to build fleets of warships and fire at the shadows before they came closer. Others warned that such action would bring disaster, since no one knew the strength of what they faced. The council chambers rang with arguments, each voice louder than the last. Outside the chamber, the people grew restless, waiting for answers that never came. One night, the skies lit brighter than ever. A long silver shape appeared above the mountains, stretching across the horizon. It moved slowly, scanning the land below with beams of pale light. People ran into the streets, staring upward in silence. No one spoke, for the sight stole their voices. The beam passed over forests, rivers, and cities, then vanished into the dark. The next morning, panic ruled the streets. Shops closed, schools locked their doors, and families fled from the outer towns toward the safety of the central cities. Rumors spread faster than truth. Some said the silver shape marked cities for destruction. Others claimed it was searching for leaders to enslave. Fear gripped every corner of Asteron. Aaron felt a duty he could not ignore. He gathered a group of engineers and scientists who trusted him. Together they planned to build a device that could intercept the signals from the sky. If we can listen to their voice, Aaron said, we may learn what they want before they act. The team worked in secret, for the council feared such actions might anger the unknown watchers. Myra continued to search through the Hall of Records. She uncovered fragments of crystal tablets that spoke of the ancients leaving behind weapons to protect their creations. These weapons were hidden, sealed under mountains or deep beneath seas. She brought this knowledge to Aaron. If the Watchers return to judge us, perhaps these hidden weapons are the only way we can stand against them. Aaron listened carefully. We must find proof. If the council does not see with their own eyes, they will never act. Days turned into weeks, and the Watchers grew bolder. Small dark probes fell from the sky, landing in empty fields and abandoned streets. At first they stayed silent, only scanning the ground with faint glows. But soon they began to move, gliding slowly across the land. Farmers abandoned their homes as the probe slid through fields. Soldiers tried to capture one, but their weapons had no effect. The probe lifted into the sky and vanished before their eyes. Aaron's group finally managed to track one of the probes. They followed it into the ruins of an old city long abandoned. There, hidden under broken walls, they found the probe resting. With careful effort and tools, they managed to disable its outer shell and carry it back to the power station. For the first time, they had captured a fragment of the Watchers. When Myra saw the insides of the probe, she felt her heart grow heavy. The designs were not foreign. They were built in the style of ancient humanoid machines, only far more advanced. Symbols carved into the metal matched the very ones in her old texts. This is not the work of strangers, she whispered. This is the work of our own ancestors. The Watchers are tied to the ancients, and through them, to us. Aaron's hands trembled as he touched the probe's core. If this is true, then we are not only facing enemies from outside. We are facing the shadow of what we once were. The council was divided when they heard the news. Some leaders shouted for immediate destruction of the probe, fearing it would call more Watchers to the planet. Others demanded it be studied, hoping for knowledge that could give them an advantage. Fights broke out in the chamber, and guards were forced to separate the leaders. The unity of Asteron was crumbling even as the danger grew. That night, the skies burned with new lights. Dozens of Watchers crossed the heavens together, their beams sweeping every land. The people of Asteron stared upward with terror, knowing the shadows were no longer far away. Myra stood beside Aaron on the balcony of the power station. Her voice was calm but filled with fear. The despair that destroyed the ancients is here. The question is whether we will fall as they did or rise to face it. Aaron looked into the sky, the glow of the Watchers reflecting in his eyes. His heart carried both fear and determination. He knew the time for silence had ended. The shadows were here, and Asteron had no choice but to prepare for a battle between its past and its future. The capture of the probe shook the planet of Asteron. For the first time, the people saw proof that the Watchers were real and not mere illusions in the sky. The council gathered in emergency session, but instead of calming the citizens, their debates only spread more fear. Some leaders demanded the probe be destroyed at once. Others argued that it should be studied to gain knowledge of the enemy. The chamber filled with shouting, and no decision came. Outside the hall, the people whispered that the probe was cursed. Families locked their homes, soldiers patrolled the streets, and fear pressed down on every district. The watchers in the sky moved more boldly now. Each night, new lights crossed above the cities. Sometimes beams of light touched the ground, sweeping across fields and forests. Those who were caught in the beams reported strange feelings of weakness and confusion. Aaron worked with his team to open the probe carefully. Inside, they found a core of glowing crystals surrounded by metal arms that pulsed like veins. The designs looked ancient yet advanced, more complex than any machine they had ever built. Symbols marked across the metal matched those in Myra's old texts. It was clear now that the probe was not built by strangers. It was the creation of the ancients, left behind to serve some purpose long forgotten. Myra stood over the machine, her hands shaking. This is proof of what the records said. The Watchers are part of the despair. The ancients may have unleashed them, or they may have lost control of them. Either way, they are tied to our past. Aaron touched the glowing core with a tool and watched as the patterns shifted. The signal from the probe was the same as the one sent by the beacon. The beacon and the Watchers are linked, he said. They speak the same language. If we learn to read it, we can know what they plan. But they had little time to learn. Only days later, a new swarm of probes descended. Dozens of black shapes glided down from the sky, landing in farmlands and open plains. At first they only scanned the ground, but soon they began moving toward the cities. Soldiers rushed out to block them, armed with rifles and energy cannons. Citizens watched from rooftops, their eyes wide with dread. The first clash came in the southern plains. A group of probes floated toward a farming town. Soldiers opened fire, filling the air with blasts of light. The shots struck the probes, but the machines did not fall. Instead, their shells glowed and absorbed the energy. Then, with a low hum, the probes released beams that cut through the ground. Fields of crops burned, and the earth split apart. Soldiers tried to advance, but many were thrown back by waves of force. The town fell into chaos. Families fled into the hills, leaving their homes behind. The soldiers who survived retreated, carrying the wounded with them. For the first time, the humanoids faced the power of the Watchers directly, and they knew their weapons were too weak. News of the clash spread quickly across Asteron. Panic took hold of the people. In the northern cities, riots broke out as citizens fought for food and shelter. In the east, entire villages abandoned their homes, marching toward the capital in search of safety. The council tried to calm the masses, but their words held little weight. The people wanted action, not speeches. Aaron refused to surrender to despair. He and his team studied the captured probe again, searching for weakness. After long hours, they discovered that while the outer shell absorbed energy, the core pulsed with unstable power. If they could strike directly at the core, the machine might fall. Aaron shared this discovery with the soldiers, and hope flickered again. Myra, meanwhile, searched the old texts for more guidance. She found a passage that spoke of the ancients facing their own creations. The words said, "The shadow we built turned against us, and only knowledge saved the few." She read these words aloud to Aaron. The ancients were destroyed by their own machines. We must not repeat their mistakes. Knowledge is the only path to survival. The next clash came sooner than expected. A group of probes entered the outskirts of the capital city itself. Aaron and Myra stood on the walls as soldiers prepared to defend. The machines floated silently, their lights sweeping across the stone streets. Citizens screamed and ran in every direction. The soldiers fired, and once again the blasts were absorbed. But this time, Aaron's team aimed directly at the glowing cores. The result was different. One probe shuddered and fell to the ground, its light fading. A cheer rose from the soldiers, and for the first time, victory seemed possible. Yet the other probes reacted swiftly. They released bursts of energy that sent soldiers flying. Buildings cracked, and fire spread across the streets. The battle raged until the machines lifted into the sky and vanished, leaving ruin behind. The capital was shaken, but hope had survived. The people had seen that the Watchers could be defeated if their weakness was found. Still, the cost was high. Dozens lay injured, homes were destroyed, and fear remained heavy in the air. That night, Aaron stood with Myra in the silent ruins of the street. The beacon pulsed again in the distance, its glow reaching across the sky. Myra spoke softly, "The first clash is only the beginning. Greater shadows are still to come." Aaron clenched his fists, his heart burning with determination. "Then we must rise higher than fear. If we are truly the children of the ancients, then we will not fall as they did. We will fight, and we will survive." Above them, the sky flickered with new lights, larger and brighter than before. The Watchers were gathering, preparing for something greater. The war for Asteron had only begun. The ruins of the capital still smoked from the clash with the probes. Families rebuilt their homes with weary hands, while soldiers patrolled streets filled with ash. The victory of striking down one probe gave the people a spark of courage, but fear lingered in their hearts. Everyone knew more battles would come, and the Watchers would not rest until their mission was complete. Aaron and Myra returned to the captured probe, determined to unlock more of its secrets. They set up their workshop inside the power station, surrounding the machine with tools and glowing screens. For hours, they worked to open its core without destroying it. At last, the shell cracked, revealing a crystal heart filled with streams of light. The patterns inside moved like rivers, shaping words neither of them could read. Myra leaned close, comparing the glowing marks with her old book. "These are the same symbols," she whispered. "But here, the meaning is clearer. The Watchers are not just machines. They are guardians. They were built to observe and judge." Aaron frowned. "Guardians of what?" Myra turned the fragile pages of her book. "Guardians of us. The ancients created the humanoids not as equals, but as an experiment. We were left behind when they vanished. The Watchers remained to watch over the experiment and to destroy it if it failed." Her words cut into Aaron's heart. He wanted to deny them, but the evidence lay in front of his eyes. The designs of the probe, the symbols, and the beacon all pointed to one truth. Their entire people were not born free but shaped by the hands of the ancients. As night fell, Aaron walked through the streets, thinking of Myra's words. He saw children playing in the dust of broken homes, laughing despite the danger around them. He saw families sharing food, helping one another rebuild walls and roofs. He saw soldiers standing guard with pride in their eyes, ready to protect their world. None of it felt like an experiment. It felt real, it felt alive, it felt earned. The next day, Aaron presented his findings to the council. The chamber filled with gasps and cries as Myra explained the truth of the ancients. Many leaders refused to believe. They shouted that such claims were lies meant to weaken morale. Others sat in silence, staring at the ground, unable to deny what was before them. One elder stood and said, "If what you say is true, then we are nothing but creations of a lost race. If the Watchers come to end us, perhaps we should accept our fate." Aaron's voice rose with anger. "No. We may have been created by the ancients, but we have lived our own lives. We built our homes, raised our children, and shaped our world with our hands. We are more than their experiment. We are a people, and we will not be erased." His words struck the council, and murmurs spread through the chamber. Hope began to spark where despair had ruled. For the first time, leaders saw a choice beyond surrender. Outside, news of the discovery spread quickly among the citizens. At first, many were shocked. Some wept, believing their existence was nothing but a game of the ancients. but others stood taller, declaring that their struggles gave them meaning. They were not bound by the will of the ancients, for those beings were long gone. What mattered now was the will of the living. That same night, the beacon pulsed brighter than ever. Across the skies, dozens of watchers appeared together, forming patterns like an army preparing for war. Their beams touched mountains and seas, as if searching for something hidden. Aaron and Myra realized the watchers were not only observing but also hunting. They were searching for the hidden weapons left behind by the ancients. Myra turned to Aaron with urgency. If they find those weapons before we do, they will use them to finish us. We must uncover the secrets first. Guided by the old texts, Myra led Aaron to the northern mountains where caves stretched deep into the stone. For days they searched through dark tunnels, carrying lamps and tools. At last, they found a sealed chamber carved with ancient symbols. Inside rested a great machine, silent but whole, covered in dust. Aaron approached it with awe. The machine was shaped like a sphere, larger than any building in the city. Its surface shimmered faintly, as if it had been waiting for someone to wake it. On the walls of the chamber, more symbols glowed faintly. Myra translated them aloud. This weapon was left by the ancients not to rule but to protect. Only their children can awaken it. Only those who rise above despair can command its power. Aaron placed his hand on the sphere, and it responded with light. Energy surged across the chamber, and the walls trembled as the machine came alive. Its glow filled the caves, pushing back the shadows. Myra whispered, "This is the proof. We are not only experiments. We are heirs. The ancients left us the power to choose our own path." Word of their discovery spread quickly through Asteron. For the first time in weeks, the people felt hope stronger than fear. Songs rose in the streets, soldiers stood with pride, and families believed in survival. The despair that had weighed on them began to lift, replaced by determination. But above the planet, the watchers grew restless. They gathered in greater numbers, their lights flashing like warnings. The first clash had been a test. Now, a greater storm was coming. Aaron looked up at the sky with steady eyes. The secrets of the ancients had been revealed, and they were heavier than any weapon. Yet in that weight, he found strength. The humanoids were no longer lost children. They were a people who would fight for their future. The discovery of the hidden weapon in the mountains changed everything. For weeks, despair had ruled the hearts of the people, but now hope began to rise. The news spread quickly through towns and villages. Families whispered that the ancients had not abandoned them but had left them a chance to stand. Soldiers marched with new purpose, no longer fighting only to survive but to defend a future that could still belong to them. Aaron and Myra led the efforts to awaken the ancient machine. Engineers, builders, and scholars gathered in the mountain chamber, working side by side. The great sphere pulsed with light whenever Aaron touched it, but it remained locked in silence. Myra studied the walls carefully, translating more of the glowing symbols. "It will not open fully until the people stand together," she said. "The power of the ancients cannot be commanded by a single hand. It requires unity." Outside, the watchers grew bolder. Their ships hovered lower, and probes marched across farmlands. Some villages were emptied overnight, their people fleeing before the machines arrived. The council called for order, but fear threatened to scatter the population. It was Aaron who stood before the leaders once again. "We have lived in despair long enough," he told them. "We now know what we are. Not an experiment to be erased, but heirs of knowledge and strength. The watchers see us as weak because we act in fear. If we rise as one, we will show them that Asteron belongs to us." His words spread beyond the chamber. Soon gatherings filled the streets, where voices rose not in panic but in determination. People volunteered to fight, others to build, others to carry supplies. Farmers shared food freely, smiths built tools for soldiers, and healers prepared to treat the wounded. the divisions that once tore the planet apart began to fade as unity grew. In the mountain chamber, the sphere responded. Its glow grew brighter, filling the cave with warmth. The hum of power echoed through the stone as if the machine itself felt the will of the people rising. Engineers connected cables, soldiers stood guard, and Myra guided the translations. Slowly, the ancient weapon began to awaken. The first test came sooner than expected. A swarm of watchers descended from the skies, dark shapes blotting out the stars. Their beams swept across the valleys, seeking the mountain chamber. Soldiers rushed into battle, armed with new weapons designed by Aaron's team. They aimed for the glowing cores of the probes, striking them down one by one. The people cheered as machines that once seemed invincible fell to the ground in ruin. Still, the watchers pressed harder. Larger ships hovered above, releasing blasts of energy that shook the earth. Villages burned, and walls crumbled. Yet the humanoids no longer fled without resistance. Groups of fighters moved together, drawing the watchers into traps, using both ancient knowledge and new creativity. Where once there had been only fear, now there was courage. At the height of the battle, the sphere in the mountain finally opened. Its surface unfolded like petals of a flower, revealing a massive core of light. Streams of energy surged into the sky, striking the watchers above. Ships that had seemed unstoppable twisted and fell in flames. The ground trembled, but this time with power on the side of the humanoids. Myra's eyes filled with awe. The ancients left us this gift, not as masters but as guides. They wanted us to find our own strength. Aaron stood before the glowing machine, his face lit by its power. Then we will use it to protect our world. We will not be erased by despair. We will rise. The battle stretched through the night. Every street and field became a place of struggle. Families sheltered together, listening as blasts echoed across the land. Soldiers shouted as they pushed back wave after wave of probes. The weapon of the ancients sent its beams into the sky again and again, breaking apart the largest of the watchers. When dawn came, the people of Asteron looked to the horizon and saw the skies clearing. Smoke drifted upward from the ruins of the fallen watchers. Though many lives were lost, the planet still stood. For the first time since the beacon awoke, the people did not feel crushed by fear. Instead, they felt pride. The council, once divided, now stood united. Leaders who had once argued shook hands, promising to rebuild together. Soldiers carried their banners high, not as a sign of despair but as a symbol of victory. Children laughed in the streets, no longer afraid of the sky. But Aaron and Myra knew the struggle was not finished. The Watchers had retreated, yet they had not been destroyed. They had tested the strength of the humanoids and learned that Asteron would not fall easily. More would come. Stronger forces would rise from the void. Standing before the awakened sphere, Aaron placed his hand on its surface once more. The machine responded, pulsing with light as if it recognized his resolve. He turned to Myra and said, "The war is not over, but we have proven ourselves. We will face whatever comes next together." Myra nodded, her voice calm and firm. "The despair that once ruled us has been broken. We are no longer only creations of the ancients. We are a people with our own destiny." Above the planet, faint lights still moved in the far reaches of the sky, a reminder that danger had not vanished. Yet the people of Asteron no longer bowed to fear. They had risen from despair and claimed the strength left for them. Whatever came next, they would stand as one. The victory in the mountain valley gave the people of Asteron hope, but deep inside, everyone knew it was only the beginning. The Watchers had retreated, but their silence was not peace. Across the skies, signals flashed between their ships, patterns too complex for anyone to understand fully. Myra studied the transmissions and her face grew heavy. "They are calling for reinforcements," she said. "The ones who came before were scouts. The true armada has not yet arrived." The council gathered in the great hall, their voices echoing under stone arches. Once they had argued endlessly, but now they spoke with unity. They understood what was at stake. Asteron could no longer hide. It had to stand and face the storm. Aaron stepped forward. His eyes were steady as he addressed the leaders and the gathered crowd. We cannot wait for them to return stronger. We must be ready before they arrive. The ancients left us a gift, but they also left us a lesson. Strength comes not from one weapon but from the will of the people. If we stand together, then even an armada cannot break us. The people answered his call. Workshops lit with fire as smiths forged new weapons, blending ancient designs with human skill. Engineers worked day and night, building shields powered by fragments of the ancient sphere. Farmers gave their harvest to feed the armies, while healers prepared supplies. The planet itself seemed to awaken, every village and city rising with one purpose. In the mountain chamber, Myra worked to unlock more of the sphere's secrets. She discovered that it was not only a weapon but also a beacon. It could reach far into space, sending signals stronger than any machine the humanoids had ever known. With Aaron's help, she activated it, sending a message not of despair but of defiance. "We are the children of Asteron," the message declared. "We will not fall. This is our world. Come and see our strength." The Watchers heard, and their answer was swift. The sky darkened as massive ships arrived, far greater than the ones before. They spread across the horizon, a wall of metal and fire. The ground shook as their weapons struck, tearing through mountains and forest. Cities trembled, but this time the people did not hide. Across plains and rivers, armies of humanoids rose to meet the invaders. Shields of light shimmered over fortresses. New machines, powered by the sphere, rolled across the battlefield. Fighters carried banners high as they charged against the Watchers. The clash was fierce. Energy beams lit the skies, smoke and fire filled the air, but the humanoids fought with a strength born of unity. In the midst of the battle, the sphere released its full power. Columns of light shot upward, striking the largest of the Watcher ships. The ground vibrated as explosions thundered above. Ships that seemed indestructible broke apart, falling in flames. Yet the enemy pressed on, pouring their forces into the fight. Aaron led soldiers on the front lines, his voice carrying strength to those around him. "Stand firm. Remember what we fight for. This is our home." His words lifted weary hearts, and every fighter pushed forward with renewed courage. Myra stayed within the chamber, guiding the flow of energy from the sphere. Sweat covered her face as she kept the balance steady. Too much power could tear the machine apart, but too little would leave their defenses weak. She whispered to herself, not in fear but in focus. "Hold steady. For Asteron. For the future." The battle stretched for days. Hills turned to ruins, skies burned red, but the will of the humanoids did not break. Every village sent fighters, every family gave what they could. The Watchers, who once believed the humanoids were only fragile creations, now faced a people who fought not only with weapons but with heart. At last, the turning point came. The largest Watcher ship descended, its shadow covering the land. Its cannons unleashed waves of fire that threatened to end everything. But the sphere, guided by Myra and fueled by the will of the united people, unleashed its final surge. A beam of pure energy cut through the sky, striking the ship at its core. For a moment, silence filled the battlefield. Then the massive vessel split apart, falling into the ocean with a roar that shook the heavens. The remaining Watchers faltered. Their formations broke, and one by one they turned back, retreating into the void. The skies cleared, and the fires dimmed. The war was over. Exhausted but victorious, the people of Asteron stood together. Soldiers dropped their weapons and embraced one another. Families wept as they reunited. The council declared a new era, not ruled by fear but by unity. Aaron looked upon the horizon, his body scarred but his spirit unbroken. "We have faced despair and turned it into strength," he said. "The ancients may have shaped us, but we are more than their creation. We are the people of Asteron, and we will write our own future." Myra stood beside him, her eyes shining with hope. "The Watchers will remember this day. They thought us weak, but now they know the truth. Humanity is not to be erased. Humanity endures." The people cheered, their voices rising across the land. The mountains carried the sound, the rivers echoed it, and even the skies seemed to listen. Panic had once ruled their world, but despair was broken forever. Asteron stood free, and its people walked into a future of their own making.